Okay, this is the critical lap. This is the critical lap. Confirm.
Leave me alone. I know what to do.
Welcome back to the Critical Lap podcast. This is Ruben. Hey, Daniel, how are you?
Man, I'm so happy to be watching Formula One racing again.
What a day.
On a weekend.
Yeah, it's race week. It's race week. It's race day.
Race day.
Just finished the Bahrain Grand Prix. Still don't have a great nickname for that, although today offered some great ones. But yeah, hopefully you've had a chance to watch the Bahrain Grand Prix. If you haven't, hopefully you haven't gotten any spoilers already by tuning in here, but go watch a fantastic Grand Prix and then come right back here to listen. Thanks again for joining us.
Race of the year so far, only number 4.
So
number
good.
4?
Number 4.
Right?
Number 4 Grand Prix.
Number 4, yeah.
Yep.
See, I don't know what's going on, but yeah. Number 4 Grand Prix, but so far, like if you're going to miss any of them, don't miss this one.
Don't miss
this one. Is it sort of kind of like reinvigorated my faith in Formula One. It filled my cup,
That's
so
right.
to speak.
Oh yeah, just after because a slow week in Suzuka. Let's be honest. I mean, we made the best of it, as good fans will do, but it was a slow week, and I think they had more overtakes in the first lap, maybe off the start, like in the first 4 or 5 turns of this race, than in all of Suzuka. So we're excited to cover that today. We're going to be reviewing the Bahrain Grand Prix, the results from that, all the implications, a little bit of updates on some of the news that we've gotten over the weekend and last week. And we're right in the smack dab in the middle of a great triple header with Saudi Arabia coming up next weekend. So it's a great time to be an F1 fan. Before we jump in, if this is your first time joining us, thanks for joining us. If you're returning, welcome back. If you're a regular listener or if you're just here for the first time, please take a second to like and subscribe. That's a huge benefit to us. Go ahead and join and make sure you don't miss any episodes, any content that we put out here at the Critical Lap. Glad to have your listeners and love the comments. So keep it coming. And with that,
thanks everybody. Welcome back.
Let's jump in. Yeah, Daniel. I started taking notes on this when I was watching, and I started writing down all these great overtakes, and then I just gave up like halfway through this race.
You can't keep. Just let the professionals do their stat keeping.
Yeah.
It's just watch it, just take it all in, check out the results at the end. What a ride, and what a great way to kick it off, honestly.
Well, and a great, like, the whole weekend was big. The practice sessions were kind of big. We covered that they had 6 rookies taking the wheel in free practice 1. And then Alonso took the wheel off and
literally took the wheel. Literally took it off. I didn't know if Jesus was in the car with him. For him, he was going to give him the wheel.
Yeah.
Say, Jesus, take the wheel.
That's right. Alonso, take the wheel. Y'all don't want that. You don't want to hear that.
Yeah, no. Take it from my hands.
He pulled it. He pulled it right off. Thankfully,
if you hadn't
didn't get
seen
hurt.
this, everybody, Alonso's wheel came off in his hands
Straight off.
while he was practicing driving his 1,000 horsepower open wheel.
Yeah. Thankfully,
super fast car.
Thankfully, it seemed like he recognized he had a problem and was already slowing down and had a big off. I think that was at turn 1. I think right down the main straight.
It wasn't quite like a Mr. Bean type situation where the wheel somehow like flew out the window or something, but a sleuthy eye could see it pop off from its position where it needed to be.
Yeah, but
and Alonso kind of like put it back very gently to see, like, is he going to be able to steer
I loved
the
one of the
car?
commentators was like, I mean, that can happen, but I mean, they have to mean to do it. Like, they know how to release those things, and they're experienced stuff they won't have. And one was like, well, yeah, Alonso's done a few races. Like, won't be the first time he's removed one. So exciting stuff all through practice and then qualifying, a really strong qualifying race. We had a couple of storylines we were kind of following into this weekend, wondering whether Alpine was going to get some points on the board, whether Sainz was ever going to make an appearance. A lot of storylines that really paid off this week. And then we got maybe 5 or 6 more that we get to follow now. So where do you want to jump in today? What was your big takeaway from the race, aside from the fact that we got a lot of action?
You kind of alerted me to the pre-qualifying conversations that the pundits were having with Zach Brown and Christian Horner. And it's really interesting to hear their take on the current state of their own teams, their plans for the year, maybe a little bit of insight into papaya rules or whatever the strategy is going to be this year for McLaren with 2 top drivers like that. Definitely need to make a mention here for Davide. I forget his last name. Cornecchi. Cornici.
Right. Yeah. Yep. The Italian
Fantastic
guy.
energy. The Italian guy doing the color commentary. Great energy to have on the grid and around. Seemed like maybe Edward Norton's doing like a method acting role for some reason. Like it's Edward Norton with his hair dyed. He kind of has that look for some reason. But if for nothing else, you tune into the Bahrain GP or any of the weekend activities, do it for that guy, because it's like I said, he brings a really good energy to the color commentary.
It was so great. I recorded a couple of snippets from him and sent it to friends who make fun of my Italian imitation. And I don't want to be rude with my Italian imitation because it's very caricaturized, right? Like the hands come up, and it's very any words that end with a consonant, you put an A on the end. But then that's his literal accent, and good for him. I love how he didn't let it slow him down at all.
He could be the voice behind "It's a Me Mario" in the Super Nintendo game or the Nintendo games. Yeah, I mean, it's just very quintessential. But like I said, excellent energy. I think he was a Formula 2 driver back in the day.
Winner, I think back in maybe a race winner.
Yeah. So expert on all things open wheel racing for sure. Way more so than either of us. But anyway, check him out. And he was one of the two interviewing Zach Brown. When Zach Brown kind of gave us a little bit of insight as to, we're focused on the Constructors Championship as a team. The Drivers Championship will be decided at some point later, and we're going to leave that up to the guys, to the drivers. So to me, that kind of set the stage for my mentality and my perspective on how it was going to go when the lights went out. Piastri got pole in qualifying, earned it, good for him. Norris, not so great. P6, right, is where he started. Where you're qualified to start. And then lap 1, Norris is in P3, right? So now Norris is in contention for podium plus some, right? Because if lap 1 you're P3 and you're in a McLaren and the pole sitters have been in a McLaren, like surely there's a battle to be had. But he never got off the back foot because 5-second penalty for a little bit of a false start. Maybe not the best strategy, or maybe not the most aggression, or maybe just not in the best form this week. It just as evidenced by qualifying results. Yeah. So to me, the takeaway was Piastri dominates. Really kind of sets the tone and establishes his ability to do that. And I think that will have some knock-on effects, or carry some tone with it throughout the rest of the year, where it's like, no, hold on. In a track where it's very competitive, where there's a lot of room for overtaking, and it's a very difficult track conditions wise to get the best out of the car. I laid down the best lap in qualifying. I dominated the whole race. I got top of the podium. Yeah. I don't want any flack. I don't want to swap positions anymore. Right.
No, it was definitely a statement for Piastri, and he won't tell you that, right? He's so quiet and so reserved in his response, but it was a statement from Piastri, and honestly, he's beginning to make the case more and more that while we look around at all the distractions and all the drama happening with other drivers, and we kind of ask whether this driver has it or whether they're in a good enough car, Piastri just quietly continues on. And if he hadn't had that one really bad spin out in the rain and the chaos of Australia, we would have continuously been talking about him as the front runner in the Drivers' Championship.
Right.
Quick review of the results, if you haven't seen them already. Oscar Piastri in first place, he was on pole and first place finisher. One of the few starters who ended in the same place in this race. First place, Oscar Piastri. Second place, George Russell, followed by a third place, Lando Norris. I think Max Verstappen barely got himself out of seventh place by the end on the last lap of the race.
The last turn that you could feasibly overtake someone in front of you on the last lap. Yeah. That's how close it was for Max.
He did what Lando Norris could not do, because Lando Norris was trying to pull the same move on George Russell and just couldn't get it done. But aside from that, pretty strong day for the Ferraris. They came in fourth and fifth after starting. Let me double check my numbers here. The Ferraris started second and ninth. So a little bit of a mixed bag for them. I think Charles Leclerc would have wanted a stronger result, but I think they'll probably take fourth and fifth given how they started.
Sure.
So yeah, great overall result. But yeah, what you're talking about, I thought was really interesting. In qualifying, for those of you who didn't see qualifying, and we'll take a break from the race results before we get back into those, I do want to call out a moment. In qualifying, they interviewed Um, before qualifying and after qualifying, they interviewed Zach Brown and they interviewed Christian Horner before qualifying. So there were 2 interviews with Zach Brown, and the pre-qualifying interview with him, he was very open about the fact that they were prioritizing both championships, the Constructors' Championship and the Drivers' Championship. And so they wanted both, in his words, 2 horses in the race. We don't have a clear number 1. There's two to be had there. And, essentially with a smile on his face that, this is the way we run things and we're happy to be racing the way we do at McLaren. He did make a comment because they called out the commentators made a question or put a question to him about Red Bull and others and the way Red Bull is training up their rookies or bringing in that secondary driver. He kind of avoided taking a direct shot at Red Bull, although I'm guessing Christian Horner won't take it that way. But he made a comment like, hey, we do things with 2 drivers and so forth, and we do things differently than other teams on the paddock. But those other teams also have a lot of championships and seem to be doing really well. So like each team has their own thing. And I thought, boy, that'll, Christian Horner might take offense at that because Red Bull typically will keep making statements about the same thing. We have 2 drivers. There's no clear number 1, yada, yada, yada. But he doubled down on it. When they interviewed him, he said, we're focused on the Drivers' Championship right now. When you look at the gap in constructors, effectively, we're putting all of our eggs in the Max basket.
Yeah, credit where credit's due. And I think Zach Brown's no fool. He's not saying anything intentionally that he doesn't have a purpose behind. But he's also, I think he's always kind of been a fair competitor. He's been sort of above the belt on most things. So yeah, I mean, hey, these guys are pretty good at winning and they have their own way of doing it, but this is the McLaren way and this is what we want to do. I think that's fair. I don't see how you could really, be critical of that to a degree where you might say, oh, our strategy is better, considering, if you're Christian Horner, if that's what we're talking about here, considering the situation that they've been in the first few races with Lawson and the switch to Tsunoda and how the car is whatever you want to call that car this year, Well, and again, not to spend too much time on this, but I don't know that we can spend too much time on it given the level of investment that they put into Verstappen and these championships. Verstappen had a comment last week after Suzuka, and I'm guessing you saw this. It was to the Dutch media where they asked him some question about the McLaren, and he said, "Oh, if I'd been in that car, you wouldn't have even seen me in this race." Yeah.
Right? And then Piastri and Norris took a little flack because they jumped on camera and said something in response, and somebody said, "Oh, they shouldn't have responded, they shouldn't have reacted." To me, all that, who cares about any of that? What I actually care about is the Red Bull mechanics who just heard their top driver say, "I would have been way better off in a different car."
Yeah.
That's like heartbreaking for Red Bull.
Hey, I think that's the nature of the sport,
Yeah.
I've always said it takes a village, and to your point, any benefit or positive or celebration or achievement, I think credit goes to everybody. Same thing on the other side of that coin. So, Max, I think drivers kind of, they tend to be divas sometimes. They can get away with that kind of thing. Max, even though he's pretty even-keeled and just kind of frank about everything, that is a tough thing to hear, I'm sure.
And listen, like, I know they can all take it. I'm just going to go ahead and put, another chip down on my bet that Max Verstappen is already curating his options to get out of Red Bull. He knows it. He doesn't care, and he's willing to throw them under the bus. Yeah. And I think the energy's starting to drop too. When they interviewed Christian Horner, there's a little bit less of that fire. They didn't have a super strong result this week. I think Yuki Tsunoda had a great performance. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit, but they're doing fine. But I think they can see the writing on the wall, and Verstappen's not really pulling any punches. So, and that's fine as long as you're performing at his level and you can land a seat somewhere else. But don't throw your teams out of the bus.
Since we're on the topic, 20 seconds. We don't want to take too much time here. Quick reaction for you.
Yeah.
Who catches Verstappen if he leaves?
Aston Martin. I still got my money on Aston Martin.
Okay, I'll let you have that one.
I have a conspiracy, by the way. I have a conspiracy theory I'm going to run by you later about that. Let's do that. I've got a quick reaction for you later on conspiracies. I'll actually give you your pick of conspiracies that make the most sense to you. But that coming up later on the Critical Lap. let's get back to the race results. Going back into the race results, one of the big stories we were following into it was Carlos Sainz. And I wrote a note down halfway through this race. Welcome back, Carlos Sainz, with an incredible pass on Hamilton, lap 9. Hard defending against Tsunoda, coming up fast in lap 30. And he did a good job holding off Tsunoda. I think all throughout the race, Sainz was just everywhere all race long.
He
Until
did
was
a pretty
nowhere.
good job holding off Tsunoda in spite of, getting harpooned a couple of times.
Getting harpooned, yeah. And then he got a
what else do you call it when there's a
penalty.
hole in the side of your car after the fact?
Yeah, I mean, Sainz, I'm going to give it to him. Welcome back, Carlos Sainz.
Yeah.
Fantastic race. Great qualifying. Let me double check I forget where he started. It was like 6th, wasn't it?
I do believe he out-qualified Albon. I think he made it into Q3.
8th.
And Albon made it. He was out in Q2.
He was out.
Is that right?
He got it. Yes, he was out in Q2. He was in 15th place. And Carlos Sainz started in 8th. So great qualifying run. Great start. Really good defending, really good passing. And for half of the race, I thought, man, welcome back, Carlos Sainz. This is going to be a great result.
Yeah.
And I think you probably could argue about it. I thought it was a little harsh. You got a 10-second penalty for effectively locking up and pushing someone off the side. And then Tsunoda got nothing for ripping a hole in the side of Sainz's car.
Yeah, and I hope this isn't where the conspiracy theory, multiple choice is coming, because I've got my own thoughts there. But what is going on? What's going on where Lawson gets 2 separate penalties for what seems to be borderline just, racing.
Yep.
What do they say? Rubbing is racing. That's a little NASCAR quote for you.
Yep.
And then Sainz, when I saw the penalty came for Sainz, I was like, I'd kind of forgotten that he did, lock it up on the inside of Antonelli after the restart.
Yep.
And I was just thinking, wait a minute. Isn't there something else they should be addressing here?
Right.
So,
and I think Tsunoda rear-ended him at one point. I know it didn't do any damage, but it was Tsunoda trying to cut really fast across the backside, clipped his rear tire. And I thought, you give him a puncture right there. And you just ended his race because you didn't want to give the space or you didn't slow down enough.
Yeah.
So, and I've got nothing against Tsunoda. I think he did a great race, and I think he's establishing himself comfortably as that second second Red Bull driver. He's a Red Bull driver.
Did you already shoot all your balls? Is that why you can't say?
I didn't. Not me. Norris did. We're gonna get to David Coulthard-isms soon.
Yeah, so I do want to point out Tsunoda qualified 3 spots behind Verstappen, made it all the way to Q3, what's my math here? Mental math. Just under a second behind Verstappen in qualifying form. So, I would say if this had been race 2, if this had been China, and then he had, basically a race and a half in China to work on his form, and then some, and then some, and then some until this point, do we see Tsunoda doing a little bit better than he did this week? I don't know. I like to think that improvement could be linear, at least for several races of the year. So I'm so far I'm happy with Tsunoda in that Red Bull. I'm happy seeing him there and seeing that he's got the chance.
Yeah, it seemed like he stepped up. He's at least a strong performer. If you look at that performance today and he continues at that pace, you would say it's a good replacement for that Red Bull seat. He deserves it. He finished 1 place ahead where he started. So did Verstappen. He had a really hard-fought race, gained a lot of positions, did some really good defending. I think that's the person they want in the car right now. It was kind of a little bit of a tale of 2 races all throughout. Lots of action all throughout it. I had really strong hopes for Doohan. He qualified in Q1. He was P5. It was a tale of 2 races in some ways. Daniel, I had a lot of storylines I was following really closely, and then they all kind of pivoted and shifted. Alpine had a really good race overall. I think you would call that a win for Alpine getting points on the board. But Doohan was performing really well all weekend, and unfortunately just kind of lost it right at the end of the race, I think after that last safety car. Doohan got P5 in Q1. I was hoping he would get higher. by the end of it, but I think he got dropped out in Q2. Gasly qualified P4 overall in Q3. Had a great start and a great finish. Alpine scores 10 points. Is that right? No, that can't be right. That's not where he finished.
Alpine, 6 from Gasly.
Alpine gets 6 points from his finish. And then Doohan, unfortunately, down in 15th place after kind of a tough race. But I did feel like we needed to change. We've been saying this whole time, like, what are you doing as a joke? I think we switch it over now to how you doing?
How you doing? How you doing, Alpine?
How you doing? It was a good race for Alpine. And honestly, really great. At one point, I looked up at like lap 20, and there were 7 teams in the top 10. And I don't think that changed through the end of the race. At one point, there were 2 Haas's up there, 2 Williams, 2 Alpines challenging. A really fun racer all around.
Yeah, one call out from the commentators, I think it was like lap 27 to 29, maybe 27, 28. Max went in for a pit stop and he came out dead last. I mean, and this wasn't because there was a big mistake or anything. There were some weird pit stop things happening this race. But essentially that means that halfway through this race, or almost halfway through this race, the field was still so tight. I think it was like 29 seconds front to back. Right. You could still, like, if you weren't in first place and you went into the pits, you were not coming out in a good spot. And I mean, I think it's a sign or a function of great track, function of lots of competition this year among all teams, and a function of, it's the end of the regulations and everybody's finally getting it together, finally figuring out how to be in that top, plus 30 seconds after almost 30 laps, Yeah, that and a completely different track from Suzuka. I mean, just night and day difference. 3 DRS zones, constant passing. It didn't, I don't think anyone got close to lapping. Maybe right at the end, or maybe just before the safety car.
Right before the safety car. Yeah. Gabriel Bortoleto finished with a 66 second gap. So still a good 20, 30 seconds space between the leader, which is good to see. No lapping. The pit strategy was all over the place. I was trying to take notes on it. At one point, they all started running their pit stops around lap 30 or 20, 25, 30. And I just gave up trying to keep track of which ones had good strategies and which one didn't. It's obvious Antonelli got shafted on the strategy. I don't even know what their strategy was there, but at one point he ended up on soft tires on like lap 28 and got 4 laps out of them, and then that safety car came out and that was the end of his race. Yeah. And right before that, Antonelli is looking strong.
He was fighting for positions from 6th or 5th. I mean, he was right on Russell's heels.
Had a fantastic pass on Verstappen.
Yeah. Sort of suffered a Hadjar from whatever race that was, China, when the barbs sort of got caught out by the 2-stop, 1-stop.
Yeah. I still have to give him strong performance, especially given that he and I think Hadjar got called out for track limits on lap like 20, 21.
A lot of track limits, but yeah, Hadjar I think early on was one of the ones.
But I don't think they ever got the black and white flag for it. Black and white's for track limits.
Black and white's for the 3rd infraction.
Sorry, so they got the black and white flag, but they never did it again for the next 37 laps.
It's more or less an automatic 5-second penalty if you have a excursion out of the boundaries after the black and white flag.
Right. So impressive that he was able to kind of get it together from that point. I thought they're about to start racking up. This is going to be embarrassing for the rookies. They're going to rack up a bunch of 5-second penalties. But
there was one rookie in a V carb that did that actually, not on track limits, but for other reasons.
Yes, Liam Lawson, rough day.
Rough day for Liam.
Abound. Okay,
sorry, buddy.
I mean, we're getting closer and closer to some of my conspiracy theories, but we'll leave those. There was a great moment in lap 32, right after the restart, where both Williams were like hunting together at one point. They had Tsunoda, I think, locked between them.
Yep,
I think it was Tsunoda, and the two of them. It looked like Sainz backed him up in a corner once, specifically to let Albon get by, and it looked like he just about had it. And then it all kind of fell apart for him. But it was fun to see two Williams in the hunt, quite literally, against a Red Bull.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we called early in the season before anything started. I think it was right after practice, and we kind of saw some of the performance from these cars. And we were talking, there would be a team. I thought it would be Williams more than anybody, but there would be a team chomping at the heels of those typical contenders, those top four teams. Whoever's at the bottom of that top four is going to be battling it out with Williams. This race, I think it was a little bit of Williams, but a little bit more Alpine, honestly.
Alpine stepped up.
Yeah, so, I think, is it Ferrari that's going to be back there, the backstop to the top four, fighting off a Williams or a Haas maybe, who knows, or an Alpine, or is it going to be Ferrari? This week I think it was more Red Bull. Max struggled a good bit with the car, at least early on, and I kind of thought, I think I made a note, somebody overtook Max. I think it was an Alpine. I think Gasly overtook Max, and then that's who Max was struggling to get around at the end, so.
Well, and it was a bang play, as we say in baseball, with Max and Gasly on that last lap. I didn't think he'd even gotten it. They didn't even show us a replay of the pass. I had to look that one up afterward. They went to the podium ceremony before we saw that one. But
yeah,
Gasly just about held him off.
Had to get that rosewater drink going.
Yeah, well, it is Bahrain. The Haas has had a great one. I think at the beginning of the season, we thought it was going to be Williams, like you said, in that middle pack, hunting down the fourth place car or fourth place team.
Yeah.
And then it looked like Racing Bulls right off the bat. And then, or Racing Bulls became the second team that looked competitive in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Alpine's now stepped up, but Haas had a good race as well. The reality is, unfortunately, for Kick Sauber right now is the only team at the back of the pack, feels like. If Alpine can continue this, really what we have is 4 front runners, 5 midfield teams, and 1 team at the back.
Yeah.
Which is, I know that may be leaning into it, given that Gasly just literally put points on the board for Alpine.
But something happened in that car. I mean, I haven't done any research or I haven't listened for what they're talking about technical wise, but something happened in that car. I don't think you change form that drastically.
Yeah.
Just because it's a different track, or
right.
just because it's a better track for driving. I think they qualified well and I think they raced well. So something's being done in the garage at Alpine that's great for performance.
Yeah. Well, it'll be a really interesting week, I think, to go, for those of you who are kind of maybe getting into Formula One more and more and looking for good resources to go out and read and watch some of these interviews post-race and midweek from the teams kind of explaining what happened. One thing that we already talked about, I'd love to just hear the Mercedes breakdown of what happened with Antonelli. Were there communications? Was he struggling with a certain tire? Was there a plan that kind of fell apart? Because if Antonelli had had a better strategy, I think the Mercedes today, the two of them they're making an obvious case as the clear number 2 and threatening for number 1 in terms of teams. Ferrari stepped up. We talked about that one coming to this week. They're solid and consistent. I don't know how much that you can attribute to their new floor that they brought. And then Alpine, both cars performing well. Some major upticks, but I'm curious to hear what the teams say as we go into the week, how much they can explain away some of the one driver discrepancies we saw versus the actual car performance.
Right.
What else? Anything else from the race? Russell almost lost his steering wheel, apparently. Did you hear his call at lap 50?
I want to say it was a little bit of a joke.
For sure.
I don't think I don't know what he was. I mean, he had technical issues the whole time. I think they were talking about losing his dash. He's like, as long as I don't lose the wheel,
as long as the wheel doesn't come off. Yeah. No, he had, I think they said his dash mic, like all the lights, which has got to be fun as a race driver, just to be, you're basically flying without any instrumentations.
I mean, it is a night race, right? So like they say that there's like a different feeling as you're at speed, as you're driving at speed in that car when it's not, when it's instead of daytime, it's nighttime. I think it's a different feeling of tunnel vision or feeling that you're going
Right.
really fast. So now let's take away even one more sensory input, which is the lights on your dash or lights on your wheel. And what does that feel like?
Yeah.
Probably feels like sensory deprivation, or like you're in one of those chambers to a driver who's used to all that data coming at him. But I don't know.
All that data and then the rev counter. But I saw an interview with a driver who said the little rev lights that spike for shifting up, that's not as valuable to them, that they almost never look at that. They have a beep. This is what I heard once on an interview, is that they have a beep in their ear when it's time to change gears.
Yep.
That's probably valuable, but
I think
that seems like that would be super annoying.
I think there's a beep when you're on the start. I think there's like an optimal, 0 to full speed gear pattern or gear shift pattern. And I want to say I heard Vettel talking about that in an interview one time. I don't know if that's what you're referencing or not, but yeah, I don't know. I do know what I have heard, or what I think I've seen a video on, is that the Formula One TV graphics that they lay onto the halo aren't exactly accurate either, but it make for good TV.
Sure.
So
what do they call it's like an audible. So you're saying like on the race, maybe the beeps are more prominent, or that's when they're hearing those.
I think what they're saying is what I took it as was when you're starting, it's lap 1, right? And you're on the start, you're looking in your mirrors, you're looking ahead, you're looking around you more than anything. So
you need some more assist on.
Yeah, you want that rev counter or that optimal upshift timing to be in your ear instead of in your eye, because your eye is looking at something else. And if you're trying to not hit people on the way down to the first turn,
right,
and shift gears up, you don't want to be looking down every time.
Yeah,
little beep doesn't hurt.
It's like launch control, right? That's what they call it. You can't have launch control or launch assist in an F1 car. It's got to be all
correct
based on the driver. A little bit. I mean, the Norris car breakdown was intense. If you factor in the fact that he lost his transponder, his name plummeting, by the way, gave me like a heart attack 3 or 4 times. Because every time that happens, they usually go, "Oh, Russell's off, he's off," and then they pan over and the car's on fire.
It even got him one time when Norris finally got around Leclerc. They said he took the 3rd place, and he was really going to P4 when he got around Leclerc.
Yeah,
because it was Norris. Maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I feel like
it was confusing. I mean, it was on this restart that it started happening. He was in second place on the restart, and he fell all the way to the bottom. But it happened at least 4 times, and they finally just started saying, "Don't look at that. He's currently in second place." But between that and the DRS issue, which we should talk about the DRS issue, because that one is still outstanding in terms of whether Russell's going to get a penalty for that.
Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling the conversation's over by now, but they did call him to the steward's offices after the race to wag their finger in his face or to ask for an explanation. I don't really know. I mean, I guess it is up to the teams to follow their, to have the technical systems in place or whatever technical metrics allow you to open and close that. I think there's a decent amount of automation in it if everything works correctly, to where you can't accidentally open it when you don't need to. I mean, whether it's cheating or not, if you're going around a turn, which we saw this with Doohan in Japan, if you open that thing and you don't need it open, then you can really lose the car. Right. So, one thing is you got to be within the right distance from the car in front of you to open it. Number 2, you got to be in the right spot on the track to open it. So I think there's automation there to where the transponder says go, no go on, opening or not. So if something is failing there and your button still can actuate that flap, well, you have to be, you kind of like, I think they were, Russell and his engineer were going back and forth, and his engineer first wanted him to reset the system, essentially like a reboot to default or something like that. And then number 2, he said, by the way, you're not going to be able to use it until I say you can use it. And I think he was saying, like, don't hit the button until I say, because maybe you're hitting the button so that it flops open as soon as the system allows it to, based on all the metrics. But I think he was kind of saying, like, if you push that button, it's going to open. Right. You need to push it.
We have to be 100% sure that we're in the DRS zone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, that's fine. But then Russell apparently in an interview said, okay, here's his quote. "We were having all sorts of failures. One lap, I clicked the radio button and the DRS opened. I hit close and backed off, so didn't gain any advantage. And then he said, so a penalty would be really harsh. And he said, there were technical problems. I backed off. It was probably open for less than a second.
Right. And look, I don't think he got an advantage there. So I don't think there should be a penalty for that. But if you want to split hairs, or if you want to be really technical here,
sure.
Just like, hey, did they gain an advantage by being off the track in that turn, or for that moment of time where they got out of the line and back in the line, right?
Right.
The penalty could be justifiable there. If you were just fiddling around with it and just like, will it open? I don't know. Let's see. Let's test it. I don't think that the radio button would open the DRS. I mean, if this Mercedes Formula One car,
sure.
W17, whatever it is, if the radio button can open the DRS, I'm sorry.
Then you got a real problem. They're like, Russell, do you understand? He's like, I don't want to push the button. If I push the radio button, I'm going to get a penalty. Well, the results are in. They have not handed him a penalty. They have stated, let's see, the stewards accepted the improper use was not deliberate and was outside of the driver's and the team's control. The connection, quote, the connection between the automated DRS activation system and the car failed due to issues with a timing loop provided by an external party. So apparently the entire issue was caused, I'm guessing, from like a software issue with whoever provides the loop timing that tracks the car as it goes around.
Yeah. In our speculation here is what explains why other cars were having the same issue. So maybe we should have put a little bit more weight on the fact that the other cars, I mean, we know Norris was talking about it, or his engineer was talking about it to him around the same time. So maybe we shouldn't be blaming Russell so much for this problem.
No, I'm not blaming Russell. I will say though, my initial reaction was there's lots of things that are outside the driver's control and they'll still get penalized for those, right? So to your point, they go off the track, they lose traction, but it was technically all four wheels leaving the track. They'll get penalized. And even the commentators will say they didn't gain an advantage from that.
Right.
This one, it seems like the only reason why they're letting him off the hook is that they're saying that it was the third party issue. And it says that they actually the FIA authorized manual activation of the DRS at the time the driver was experiencing a brake-by-wire issue and other electronic issues. So we're gonna chalk this one up to, I guess, was third-party software issue or third-party issue with the way they were tracking the loops. And so, this reminds me of the Grand Prix from last season. At the end of last season, was it Qatar? When the flag came up, the yellow flag came up, and Norris didn't back off, or he didn't show that he'd backed off, and they penalized him. It's the same thing. It's like letting off the accelerator for a second does very little, except that they track your telemetry and say, okay, you saw the yellow flag and acknowledged it. Right.
Yeah.
So,
well, all right. Either way, lucky for Russell that he's in second. A 5-second penalty would have put him into P5. A 10-second would have put him into P7. Huge difference in points. I mean, he would have gone from 18 points to either 10 or 6, So big deal since Mercedes is second in the constructors. The only one who isn't, a mile behind McLaren. So yeah, good for them. And I guess lucky timing for Russell and the team.
Yeah, for sure. It would have been a nightmare of a day. And I do feel like I owe George Russell a little bit of, not an apology, but just we'll give him credit where it's due. I made a joke a few episodes ago about when Lando Norris and Verstappen battled for first place finish in Australia, and then George Russell got third, that it was like two friends in the cool down room having a conversation, and then Russell was like the third wheel.
Yeah.
This cool down room felt like it was Lando Norris and George Russell, and Piastri was just this like silent winner in the background.
Just the Iceman. I think that's going to be my name for him now that, Val Kilmer, rest in peace, is no longer with us. I think Piastri has taken over the global title of Iceman.
I think that's appropriate. He's just so calm and collected. And I honestly, I saw earlier this week a joke. It was a conspiracy, Daniel, another conspiracy theory that Oscar Piastri is Verstappen's like second, or just Verstappen's like second driver. And people were like, what do you mean? And they were like, the rumor is that he's doing well to take points away from Norris to keep Verstappen in the running for the Drivers' Championship, which I think is a terrible theory because I think Piastri just wants to be champion and he is on the march right now. Like I think a better argument is what we've said before. He's Verstappen 2.0. He's, but Australian. He seems a little more chill, a little more laid back. But
Verstappen 2.0, not in the sense that he's doing any bidding for Verstappen.
No.
He hasn't sold his soul to Verstappen, I don't think.
Not yet.
Yeah, I mean, come on, guys. This one I think is a little too obvious. If you're a good driver and you have a good car, I think you just want to be world champion. I think that's why you're trying to win a race.
Yeah, I think we said at the beginning of this episode, all the squabbling going on in the background, and Piastri's like, "Yep, I'll take another first place. I'll take one more first place." At the pace he's going, I feel like the momentum is with Piastri. To be honest, this is somewhat of a quick reaction, I guess. But has it shifted? Has the momentum shifted to Piastri over Norris right now?
I think we're penalizing Norris here a little bit on style or a little bit on approach, right? Like Norris has performed. There isn't a trend pointing to a lack of performance from Norris or a big change in performance. I mean,
sure,
different track, different weekend, different biometric cycles, whatever you believe in, right? I just think that, hey, some drivers are going to be on form more so some weekends than others, period. Yeah. And I mean, Norris is less serious. He's a little bit more emotional. I mean, he's been criticized by Dr. Marco. There's all these things. Dr. Helmet Marco. He's back, boys. He's back to the
Sharpie of Red Bull
Critical Lap podcast. He's gotten that criticism, and yet he led the team last year. He led McLaren to the World Constructors title.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Say what you will. Piastri's a great driver. No, not taking anything away from him, but Norris just comes about it in a different way. He's a great driver. He likes to have a little bit more fun. He likes to be a little bit more on the, off the cuff, on the cuff, whatever. So let's not say that Norris is losing ground to Piastri. I think it's more that Piastri has gained ground to Norris or has even the playing field a little bit more. Right. And to my earlier point, he's just kind of been able to put down the performance on paper to say in the future to say, hey guys, I'm not taking second fiddle today.
That's fair. I think that's totally fair. I don't want to take anything away from Norris, but he has a fight on his hands with Piastri.
Oh,
because
for sure.
I just don't think Piastri slips much. Maybe he has a race where it's just a rough race or he spins out in the rain or something. But otherwise, you can expect him to clock in high points every race, defend carefully. And as fans, it's great, right? Because if Norris wins the championship, he will do it with several really good overtakes on his own teammate.
Yeah.
It's just going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah. The two best cars on the grid will be fighting each other instead of there being a, for all, I don't want to be mean or anything here or uncouth, but, I don't think Bottas ever really was given a chance against Lewis Hamilton in what was the best car on the grid for a long time.
No, I don't think
you might argue the same thing could have happened to Checo a couple years ago. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So,
that second Red Bull seat, as we've already covered.
That's the conspiracy. That's where the conspiracy is.
The conspiracy right
but no, thank you, Zach
Brown. It's not a conspiracy
anymore
because Christian Horner confirmed this weekend. I thought that, in some respect, was a little bit of a relief of him just saying, we are focused on the Drivers' Championship. He all but said, Yuki, glad you're here, but it's all Max Verstappen. If he asks for anything, if he wants a cup holder in this car, we're going to give him a cup holder. And that's the way it is. Like, just get over it. I'm trying to think. There were so many things. I did feel, look, I'm not a driver. I couldn't have done it better. This is what I saw. A little bit of sloppy work from Norris at the end. You could tell he really wanted to get by Leclerc. He really wanted to get by Russell. It felt like there was an easy path for him to do that over 15 laps. And somehow it never really got done. He threw a couple of ill-advised lunges. I think they just kept on calling them all race long, trying to pass Leclerc. He finally got it done, but it honestly felt like Leclerc and Russell just maintained some really good defense, and Norris just didn't have. He wasn't totally on at this race, at least in the last 15 laps.
It definitely didn't seem like he had the juice, but I think at both of those occasions, they were all on different compounds. And I think that if there was one thing that was less predictable or less obvious this weekend, it was like, what does the hard tire do? What does the medium tire do? The soft, I mean, you saw Russell go into the softs after the safety car and would go to the end of the race on softs. Could those softs have been the preferred tire over the mediums? I mean, everybody that's
fuel.
With
maybe.
low fuel, yeah, sure. Everybody that started on softs seemed to take them off really quickly. But then, later in the race, colder track temperature, less fuel. Maybe the strategy should have been, hey, let's get on the softs kind of halfway through or, an early second stop to begin with and just have that competition all the way through. Now, that's not the exact spread that we had between Norris and opponent in each of these scenarios you're talking about. I think that Leclerc may have been on the hards with Lando on the mediums when he was struggling to get around them. But again, each time there was that little bit of a difference, and it makes you think, what were these tires actually doing on this track at the given point in the race?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's true. And I thought it was hilarious right at the end, all the drivers getting on the radio to talk about their envy over the other driver's shoes, right? Like Norris got on and was like, he's got softs. That was definitely the right call. And Russell was like, why do I have softs? Everybody else has mediums.
It's a goal of mine to incorporate the word mega into my vocabulary on a daily basis, just because it was so well placed in that radio call from Norris talking about how the softs were mega. But yeah, basically it was like, no, there's no advantage here. Those are great tires.
Yeah. Yeah, it turned out all right for Russell. It did seem like the hards, people were struggling. Although Ferrari got on those hards and seemed fine. Verstappen swapped out his hards at a point that didn't seem smart to do so, but he hated them that much. So apparently, Red Bull's
there was one radio call from Lewis that he was just like, these tires suck.
Yeah.
I forget what compound it was, but again, I don't think any of the teams really had it figured out. I mean, I just don't think they were I would have liked to have seen maybe the Ferrari start on different compounds. You think that with the way they lined up on the grid, they weren't, one wasn't defending the other. They weren't going for a double podium or anything like that. I mean, they would have liked that, I'm sure, but given the way they started, probably not as likely. I would have expected something different than just both starting on mediums. I would have liked to see one on soft, one on hard, something other than just, same strategy for both cars, even though one was starting P4 and one was starting P8. What was I forget what we called out there.
P8, P9?
Sorry, P2 and P9.
Yeah.
Big spread there to be just going with the same strategy for both cars.
Yeah. I like I said, though, I did write a note down. The pit stop strategy, I'll be totally honest with you and the listeners, it completely lost me. I tried to keep up. Usually I'll try to keep track and say, one team tried soft and then went to hard, and the other one tried a 2-stop versus a 3-stop. The pit strategy on this one was insane. And halfway through the race with that safety car with the phantom debris, the pit stop strategy just went out the window. And I found myself just wondering, like, okay, someone's going to have to sort this out at the end. It felt like I'm sure someone out there, our friend Racing Blind over there, or some other who does like really detailed technical analyses, I'm sure could pull apart all the different strategies and where it could have been different and how it could have changed. But it feels like one of those board games that your friends invite you to come play, and they start explaining the rules, and there's like a mobile app you have to like download for the rules, and you're like, oh shoot, I thought I was just going to be able to like play. It's beyond me. I don't know what the optimal pit stop strategy was, but I'm sure somebody did it.
So, right.
Russell,
I think
maybe.
the optimal pit stop strategy would have been hards to the inevitable safety car, and then soft.
And then soft. Yeah. Yeah. It was either Russell or probably Piastri, but he's not telling. So anyway, great race. So much fun. We probably could just go back, watch it again, record an entire second episode. But this is where I feel like you need to watch the races. You need Drive to Survive, and those shows are great, but you're going to miss so much if you don't sit down and watch lap by lap a race like this.
Yeah. So Ruben, this, you might call this a quick reaction. I don't know. It may be too early to throw one at you.
Quick reactions with Daniel. Go for it.
What do we think is going to happen with all these little target stickers on the rear wings of these cars. I think every single car had the stickers.
Yep. Yeah, I saw that.
I hadn't noticed in previous races, but we talked a little bit about the mini-DRS accusations against McLaren again.
Sure.
We talked about that the last episode. So what do you think? I was watching every time I could to see if there was any extra opening. It seemed like some of the cars did kind of stretch into a little bit more light coming through. I don't know. What do you think? What's that going to get us?
An endorsement deal with Target. I expect more, pay less. I don't know. I don't know. McLaren seems entirely confident that they have met the requirements. And I saw a quote from Norris saying, Red Bull has had time to do whatever they want to do to catch up. So McLaren seems to have their lawyers lined up and be ironclad in their defense. But I saw that wing flex during practice. Like they put a camera on the rear wing of that McLaren and I saw the edges peel up. So I think my guess would be that McLaren has figured out a way, and probably other teams are figuring it out or will figure it out. They have figured out a way to flex that wing in a way that still meets the FIA's requirements on wing flexibility. And they're going to do it until someone says it is now measured by visible gap.
I agree with you. I think there's probably the argument, and this is probably what the teams said in their defense. We can't have zero flex, guys. We can't, unless you want us to build this thing out of carbon steel and not carbon fiber. Right. We can't, that carbon fiber is going to bend a little bit. It's just going to happen.
Right.
So there has to be some, high limit tolerance there. And then they're like, okay. And that's our target there. That's our objective for mini DRS.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only thing I can assume because I saw the flex this week. I'm assuming everyone else saw the flex. Like you said, you can lock it down and just say no flex whatsoever. But my guess would be there's enough teams now that are, no pun intended, bending those rules that no one really wants them to shut the door on that. And my guess would be there are so many engineers shifted over the 2026 project that most of the teams, maybe that's what they spent the Friday afternoon meeting on. They're like, should we do V10s? Everybody's like, no, we're busy. And then they shifted over and spent the last half of the meeting being like, hey, leave our wings alone. Get a bendy one if you want one, but we don't have time to clean this up. We've only got 20 races left.
True.
Which is what I would have said. We didn't even cover that Friday. There was a Friday afternoon meeting where they apparently discussed this.
I didn't have enough of a lull in the race to go, oh, I wonder what happened with the V10 discussion to look it up. Mm-hmm. I'll probably dive into that this week and either be excited or disappointed. Hopefully the fact that it's being discussed means that the probability is just ever increasing on getting a V10 back. Keep the KERS, keep the other not the kinetic but the heat driven energy reclaim system. Keep all that, but to give us the sound of the V10. Come on, guys. Is it too much to ask?
Apparently so. I suspect this is where Drive to Survive probably will be really helpful. Will be when they sneak that camera like up under the door and we get to hear the voices talking in the room. Or what was the famous one with Toto Wolff being like, Perez has told me that like your car is undrivable. Like if you've got a problem with your car, go fix it. We're going to get one of those moments where it's going to be the what's his name? I can't pronounce his last name.
Mohammed bin Sulayem.
You did it so well. He probably went in there and said, okay, there's a lot of popularity around V10s. How do we feel about? And then everyone jumped in and was like, no, man, like we have been planning for years to shift these over. We've spent hundreds of millions of dollars developing these cars. Like, absolutely not. You cannot shift now. I made a suggestion a few episodes ago that everything is so tight and the cars are so close together and we're starting to see more and more winners. Why would you change the rules?
Right.
And I think somebody threw in the comments like, you're an idiot.
Yeah, what's Cadillac going to do when they've been building to get to this point? And to that comment, I mean,
same argument for V10s.
It's not every year that a new team comes onto the grid, but every team is building to a different power unit spec for next year. So to throw a wrench in that today, albeit albeit it is a simplifying wrench. It's not a complicating wrench. Putting a V10 in the car with less electronics or less, KERS, whatever requirements would then simplify. So I think, I don't know. I mean, how many years of the new regs are we going to get? Seems like plenty of time to develop a really great V10 to me.
Sure. So 2 or 3 years on the next round of cars. It might be them trying to limit damage too. I do wonder how many conversations they have where they're like, "Hey, Mercedes, shoot us straight. Is this car going to be like good at all?" And they're like, "No, it's going to be really slow."
I do kind of
really
wonder.
heavy.
Yeah, I do kind of wonder. You hear these team principals talk. I do kind of wonder how good the cars could actually be. There have been comments about just how burdensome it is to meet the requirements for the 2026 engine. So,
we could see some real lemons out on the track next year.
Yeah.
And think about how that's going to, think about coming off. If we have a season this year that's as good or better than last year, and so far it is better than last year, and we've got 8 or 9 winners and this great close battle, and then we show up next year and one manufacturer figured it out and is 2 seconds ahead of everyone else on lap time or something absurd. That's going to be really frustrating. All right, I've got a quick reaction for you, Daniel.
Let's go.
This is a dealer's choice here. You're not the dealer. Whatever. You get to choose. Fielder's choice. Just going all American. Which of these David Coulthard-isms would you like to explain for me tonight? When he was commenting on outlaps in Q1, when they were getting ready for qualifying, he said, "This is the driver's Scooby-Doo moment as they prepare for fast laps." Okay, so that's option 1. Option 2 is lap 57. Norris attempts to pass Russell, and he said, David Coulthard said, "Well, he kind of missed his opportunity there. He had a good chance, but has he shot his ball down turn 1?" Which of those two would you like to explain for me tonight?
Okay, I heard Scooby-Doo and was just as perplexed as it seems you are. I was just like, wait a minute, are we really referencing Scooby-Doo as like a detective here, as like a crime solver here,
right?
Like,
or is this just like the Scooby-Doo?
Yeah,
getting all like hyped up, or what?
I even went as far as to think like, wait, was Scooby-Doo the cartoon dog named after a English, Scottish?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like, and you have to know the history of the name,
like
or the
Rocky and
Scooby-Doo.
Bullwinkle kind of thing. Yeah,
sure.
Okay.
And I don't even know that one, but did Scooby-Doo get his name from whatever David Coulthard's talking about, or is David Coulthard saying, "Hey, there's some sleuthing to be done here," and he's referencing Scooby-Doo as the sleuth instead of I don't know, Nancy Drew, Sherlock Holmes, Magnum PI, murder. Who's the Murder She Wrote lady?
Okay,
there's so many other relevant.
So he's got you
detective.
second guessing yourself, like, how dumb of an American are you?
Oh,
that
yeah,
you're like,
exactly.
Are you talking about the cartoon? He's like, no, I'm talking about like the 3rd prime minister of the UK, like Charles Scooby-Doo.
I'm talking about the Duke of Sussex from the 1500s, whose
Defeated
nickname was
France.
Scooby-Doo, and he figured out this. He ran the fastest horse in a race to
saved England in the Battle of Trafalgar. Like
Sir
Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo.
Look, this is a shout out to our fans. English fans, help us out. Is this like an English thing? Did we miss it? Is this the thought I had? Here's my theory, Daniel. Is what he meant was a like sort of like Scooby snack from the cartoon where it like peps him up, like, ooh, here we go. Or it was in cartoons where they do that thing where they run in place before they really start running.
Yep.
Like they kind of wind themselves up.
Yep.
But I think
as everybody hears you say that, you hear that sound in your head. Yeah.
We're gonna get our legendary producer Chris P to put that sound effect on us for. But that running in place before you go, that's my theory, and I'm glad you attempted to explain that one instead of shot his ball down turn one.
Well, I thought he said shooting his balls down. So
shooting his ball.
Okay,
down.
So he did say shot his ball. So maybe
probably a golf reference.
Yeah, or like an attempt on the goal. Like he kicked and it went and it didn't go in.
Sure.
And he's got to do all the work again to get back to that point.
PK over. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What else you got for me? Got another quick reaction for me?
Oh, let's see. We talked about Ferrari's strategy. I was going to throw that one at you.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you what you thought the likelihood of Russell's penalty was, but we've
I don't think it's very likely. I don't think it's very likely, to be honest.
We've already had our Scooby-Doo moment on that.
No chance he gets penalized for that. It wasn't in the driver's control. No.
Here's one for you.
Yeah.
What do we think this Rosewater Waard drink tastes like?
Are you talking about what they celebrate with? Because alcohol is illegal in Bahrain. Correct.
Here I was thinking that it was just, the stuff that the younger cousins drink at, Christmas dinner, some sort of sparkling grape juice, but it's not. It's actually like a different sparkling, like traditional, it probably tastes pretty good. I'm just wondering, do you know anything about it? Have you ever had it?
Listen, I'm not going to lie. I'm not a big fan of your floral flavored beverages or foods. Have you ever had Total Pivot? Have you ever had Turkish Delight? Famously, what Edmund in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe really wants. Have you ever actually had it?
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, it's just like a really, really rich kind of goopy, sugar covered.
It's like rose flavored. Kind of like very aromatic candle kind of thing.
Yeah. But like also very rich, like very richly
form.
Sweet, right?
Yeah, disgustingly sweet.
Yeah.
I imagine that the Rosewater one's like that. Maybe sort of like a LaCroix. Is LaCroix like, are we past the LaCroix moment? I feel like there's like a million LaCroix out there now.
So you're saying like if there was a Turkish Delight in like another room and you opened a bottle of sparkling water, that's what this... Okay.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was on the same truck with some, and the driver was eating some Turkish Delight and the fizzy water got some flavor. That's my guess. My guess would be very underwhelming, very expensive, and probably a sponsor of one of the Formula One like VIP rooms. Would be my guess, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah. All
right, I've got one for you. We had to come to it. We had to get to the conspiracy theories. This is less of a quick reaction, more. Well,
my last quick reaction is probably the same one as yours. But let's hear yours, and
let's
I'll
just
confirm.
pivot then. We're going to open up some conspiracy theories, and I think we need to figure out which one of these is the most likely. I've got a couple today. One goes all the way back to Q2, I think. There was a report, Q1. Verstappen was struggling, could not get a lap together, had no time on the board, went out with no time on the board, about to go out in Q1, pulled off a lap and managed to jump to like Q3 or P3 or something like that in qualifying round one.
And just for some, before we get to the punchline, just for some added context, on his first attempt, I believe this was Q1, on his first attempt at a flying lap, he bailed before he even crossed the line and just took it back to the pits. Yeah, like a good 6-7 minutes earlier. He slid all the way off the track and then bailed out, went back, got some new shoes, went back out on the track, and with like one run, he jumped to P3. And there was a report, they said, as he crossed the line, they said, there's a report that Max Verstappen has all four wheels off track. If so, his time will be deleted. We never saw a replay of that lap. He made it into Q2, went on from there. Never saw a replay of that lap. And they never came back to it. After a few minutes, they kept saying, like, not going to see that replay. I mean, if that is the case, it'll be deleted. And then they came back around and were like, oh, we're hearing now that race control held that message for 5 or 6 minutes. And that was from earlier when he went off and bailed out of the first lap. And I thought, okay, so that's conspiracy number one. Okay.
Oh, really? You like held a message for 6 minutes and then dropped it right at the end.
Right. Very convenient.
Convenient to explain why you're going to keep Max Verstappen in the running for Q2 when it seems like he may have slipped up. That's conspiracy number one. Okay. Conspiracy. What do you have? Throw your conspiracies out there. Conspiracy number two.
I think number two for me, I'm not going as far back as qualifying. Just Tsunoda, just not even getting glanced at for just kind of gratuitously punching a hole in the side of the Williams of Sainz. I mean, I don't know. Is it more or less a racing incident if it's oversteering and he can't control the car or whatever? I mean, I think it's up to the driver not to do it, regardless of if it's intentional or accidental, right? And then you see Lawson. You know, basically, my conspiracy theory here is Red Bull is getting away with it. Red Bull's getting protected. Poor Lawson in the barb. two separate penalties for basically the same exact thing, except it was a little bit more like wheel to wheel or a little bit more just, bumpity bump versus like actual damage being done to the floor and the side pod of a car.
Right.
And nothing against Tsunoda. I think it's more of a Red Bull thing here. What is going on with the Red Bull team, and are they getting some advantage from the powers that be?
Listen, that's my question. It does seem like they were. It does feel very fortuitous that they performed as well as they did in this race, while other cars just seemed to like disappear. Carlos Sainz, kind of an aggressive turn, locks up his brakes, 10-second penalty, gets the side of his car ripped open, he's out.
Mm-hmm.
Yuki Tsunoda, no threat there. And then the third for me of this race in particular was the phantom debris on track that brought out a full safety car.
Yeah, full safety car. And in races past, you'll see a virtual safety car to start,
right? And
then kind of like, okay, what's going to happen to the pace of the grid or of the cars, and can we do what we want to do? Okay, it's time for a full safety car, or no, we're just going to leave it virtual safety car and do what we need to do.
Right.
When it happened, I was just thinking, was there that much debris? Number one, number two, what part of the track is it in? And because we saw like the incident, I think it was turn one, but I think we saw like debris kind of like flying off little by little. So it wasn't like there was a huge pile in one spot. It seemed like it may have been a little bit more distributed, which who knows? Maybe that contributes more to a safety car, less to a safety car, a full blown one. But during the entirety of the safety car time on track, they didn't show the typical,
nothing.
Marshals out there sweeping or doing the little dart across the track to grab it, and then it's the shuttle run you did in PE back in middle school. You run down, you grab it, you turn right around, you run back.
Right.
None of that. I mean, not even like a sweeping car or what do you call a street sweeper out there, swishing it off the track or anything.
Nothing. They didn't even like show the corner where all the cars were going around it. That's usually what they do, is the cars easing around.
Yeah.
The broken up bits or something. There was nothing. And honestly, I think that conspiracy theory has the most weight. I don't know why. It did shuffle the mix up a lot. They were just talking about how it benefited certain cars over others, and Verstappen went from like P15 to P9 or P8 and started crawling his way back up through the ranks again. So again, I'm not throwing shade toward any driver. It feels like we're always throwing Red Bull under the bus. I'm not trying to throw Red Bull under the bus. It did feel a little surprising. Mm-hmm. It felt, if anything, it felt really close to, sometimes this happens in professional sports, probably around the world. If a fan jumps on the field and, let's say, takes off articles of clothing and begins running around, suddenly the cameras just like focus on one of the coaches and they all look funny, but they like won't show the field because they don't want to give airtime to the person.
Yeah, right.
It felt like that. It felt like a fan was like streaking on the back, on turn 11. And they're like, oh, full safety car. I was like, for what? Yeah. Like, don't worry about it.
Right. Not what you'd expect to happen in a place like Bahrain.
No.
But no, I would say, let me
not on Rosewater. Let's be honest.
No, absolutely not. And that's what everybody was drinking, by the way.
Generally, people who go streaking have not had 2 or 3 bottles of Rosewater.
Correct. That's not like a sugar high kind of behavior.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of.
But, I would say maybe we're just kind of getting a tone deaf content selecting committee. I don't know. I would say that there's been a lot of oddly placed radio calls this year, like just ones that were kind of out of context or timed wrong. And you even mentioned that with the one from qualifying where it wasn't a radio call. It was just like an announcement about, taking a look at Max
all 4 wheels
off the track. Right. I'll reference, I guess it was China when Lewis went, hey, I'll tell you when we're going to swap. And it came across as there being some sort of like tension between him and the engineers in the pit lane, and he was kind of just asserting some sort of dominance. He
recommended it.
It turns out he started the conversation, and he was like, "No, hold up, I'll tell you when I think it's best." Basically, is what he was saying. So, what are these guys doing? Has the Drive to Survive production?
Okay, that's what I was going to ask.
Team
has Drive to
crept
Survive
into what we're seeing on the screen in Formula One TV or on the broadcast? I don't think they've crept in there. I think the production team that manages the races really kind of deep down inside wants a job offer from Drive to Survive.
Like, you know
so
what we could
going the
release
other way
this
here.
message.
Yeah.
We'll hold this message until like it drops out like right at the right time and it's like real punchy. But again, if I can give you a tip from a fan, and I think I speak for all fans, it's interesting enough without that. Verstappen pulling a lap out at the last chance and jumping to third place in Q1 is exciting enough. You didn't have to drop a all four wheels off track message right there. So he's up there, guys. All right. That's probably the most accurate conspiracy, is that timing was wrong and it kind of messed it up.
Who knows?
All right.
Who knows? It's fun to talk about. It's fun to explore these conspiracy theories.
For sure.
Because none of this is dead. None of this is decided. We haven't really had our Scooby-Doo moment with this conspiracy theory yet. As the season goes on, and again, reasons to like the sport, we will see more of this play out. And we'll be able to ponder more and pontificate and speculate and do whatever Scooby-Doo does.
For sure. And to be honest, like there are levers that the people who run the races can pull to change the outcome of these races.
Oh yeah.
And they are legal, right? Like you can, for instance, we've talked about this a lot. People going off track, people forcing someone off the track. Well, your decision in whether that was them forcing them off the track or just a racing incident dramatically changes the outcome of the race. And you can just vary your decision on that a little bit and make a massive outcome change.
Yeah.
And technically you're within your rights to do that.
I mean, let's not forget 2021. Speaking of race outcome, championship outcome.
Out. Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, that's probably it. We should wrap it up here. I don't know how we've wrapped it up this quickly, frankly, from such a great race, but go watch the race if you get a chance. This is a great one. It definitely made up for Suzuka. We do need to lock in that nickname. I think we had a couple from last time we discussed, but we did have one thrown out of the Desert Duck because somebody pointed out, an avid listener, that fellow Formula One friend, fellow Formula One fan, friend of the pod, critical lapper,
lapper. Yeah, sure. We'll call him a critical lapper for sure. Desert Duck. To me, that's great. We could maybe call it Dodgy Duck because there's a lot of dodging going on. There's a lot of defense moves
like that.
happening with all the overtaking. But I like.
How do you feel about the Desert Dust Up?
I like the Desert Dust Up.
Okay. All right.
Speaking of dust up, I mean, it is sometimes criticized for having these huge runoff zones, but they're there to keep the dust, sand off the actual racing surface. So, yeah, Desert Dust Up. I like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have to settle. We'll give that some thought. I like the dust on the sides because it gives you a highlighter whenever a car goes wide. It kicks up that big plume of dust.
Right.
Ooh, what happened over there?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing that makes you think like maybe there'd be a safety car coming. Maybe there's something else happening soon.
Right.
Not like what happened today.
No. That safety car just appeared for some reason. Okay. Well, cool. Thanks everybody for joining the Critical Lap. We're glad to have you back, and we're looking forward to the next episode. We will be doing a grand preview this week coming up for the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. And once again, we ask you to take a moment to subscribe, get that podcast set to download so you don't miss any content from the Critical Lap. Thanks again for joining us, and thanks as always to our legendary producer on the pit wall, Chris P. And we will see you next time on the Critical Lap.
Thanks, everybody.